Thank you, Claire, and thank you, children. I couldn't say it better myself, but that's why I'm here, right? So you get to hear the same message, just 2.0, with maybe a little bit of different emphasis. But what a beautiful reflection. So I do stand here today just simply to offer a reminder that the Presbytery of Carlisle is a collection of 41 churches and 8,900 members. And we are all part of the Presbytery of Carlisle. And together, we collaborate resources of people and gifts in service to the gospel. So to that end, it is an absolute joy for me to be here today, to be present. And now I'm seeing how my crosses. I shouldn't do that. I'm done. Okay. But I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for all of you. When Pastor Stephen told me that he was doing a series called The Story of Faith, I found myself being introspective, because that comes naturally to me. And I started thinking about my own story of faith. So I'm going to share some of that with you today. And something that's important, I believe, in my story of faith is this piece that I call integration. You can also think about it as wholeness. This sense of allowing God to bring together all the disparate parts of my life into a complete, imperfect, beautiful whole. So that is the story I want to tell today, with the help of our friends Martha and Mary, dear sisters who are forever distinct, forever slightly at odds perhaps, and forever connected in our imaginations. So first I will begin with myself. Thinking back, way back to when I was a child, I learned that one way to please the adults I loved was to do what they asked me to do as well as possible and as quickly as possible. That was the surest way that I could find in my childlike understanding to be rewarded with praise and love and positive attention. And over time, I thought, well, I can take this to the next level. I could please them even more if I anticipated their needs, if I guessed at what I thought might be asked of me, and if I did it preemptively. So with an eye to perfection, I looked for any potential flaw, any slip-up. I mitigated it as quickly and as well as I could. I anticipated what might be asked of me and just did it. And over time, that became my pattern of living. Work as hard as I could, try to anticipate anything that might fall through the cracks, and to make sure that everyone was happy and satisfied. That was my job. That was my primary role as a child, as a teenager, as a young woman, and still today as a middle-aged woman. And for a long time, I thought I was unique in that. I thought that my perfectionism, that my attention to detail, that my ability to do things well set me apart. And today I am wiser, and I know better. You know who you are. Some of these threads, some of these things that I'm describing resonate with you as well. Somehow within us, there dwells this belief that we must earn love with good and perfect works. And I would imagine that there's a long lineage of like-minded daughters and sons, wives and husbands, and mothers and fathers, perhaps going back to Martha herself. These are women and men and children who anticipate needs, who work behind the scenes to create a hospitable place, who cook and clean in preparation of guests and family members who come together, embracing a desire to smooth things over, to make sure things are working in harmony, to solve problems before they arise, to be as perfect as possible, to please the important people in your life. This type of person seeks praise for their forward thinking, their resourcefulness, their clear-headedness. And make no mistake, those are good and faithful things. They are real gifts to the community. I met Anne and Loretta in the kitchen a little while ago as they were preparing a hospitable space following worship. These are all beautiful gifts to the community. But there is a shadow side. There can be a shadow side. Because people with that tendency can also be motivated by fear, by anxiety, by worry. They might even lose their sense of self as they become the person who is all things to all people, ensuring that everybody has a favorable impression of them, and in the process exhausting themselves as they try to keep all those balls in the air. Young parents, aspiring professionals, faithful church volunteers, maybe you know what I mean. So much to do and so little time. And that brings me to Martha. Dear, dear Martha, and the gospel reading for today. It is such a wonderful, rich story. And we can picture the scene, right? We can imagine Martha, her desire to please, her yearning for perfection, scurrying around the house, busying herself with countless tasks, making sure everything is in order. Can you see that in your mind's eye? And then there's Jesus in the midst of all this hustle and bustle, talking with Mary, and maybe watching Martha with interest and love. And then comes Martha's question. And I try to read it very evenly. Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. You can play with that tone of voice a little bit there, right? I said it very nicely, very evenly. But, because I know Martha in myself, when I get to that boiling point, it comes out a little differently. Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. Maybe. I think there's no getting away from the reality that contained in those words is a fair bit of pain. Martha did clearly care that her sister had left her to do all the work. That is clear. What isn't clear is the reason. Did Martha have this perfectionistic tendency that was driving her? I don't know. Maybe she cares because she was working all by herself without somebody working alongside her to provide this meal for their guests. Maybe she cares because she's being left out of the conversation. She's being left out of this place at Jesus' feet. Or maybe she cares because Mary is breaking social norms right now, being in the presence of a man she is not related to and having a conversation. Maybe Martha's embarrassed at her sister's lack of decorum. Hard to know. We can use our holy imaginations and consider the possibilities of what Martha might have been feeling. But whatever the source of her negativity, there's pain there. And she was expressing it with her accusatory language. And Jesus picked up on it. didn't he? Jesus is no dummy. He noticed her pain, and he wanted to help Martha. First, he wanted her to own whatever it was that was going on inside her. Martha, Martha, you are distracted and worried by many things. He wanted her to own that worried, that sense of worriedness, the resentment, the fear, the anxiety, whatever it was that was bubbling up inside of her. He wanted her to own it, to recognize it. Because he ultimately wanted to return her to love and to life by simply being and knowing her value as a child of God. To return her to a truth that was written by Philip Yancey in his book, What's So Amazing About Grace, a couple decades ago now. But the truth that there is nothing you can do to make God love you any less, and there is nothing you can do to make God love you any more. Because God is love. That's what God does. So in essence, Jesus was inviting her to recognize that divine love that was right there in front of her, staring her in the face. The love that hopes all things, endures all things, and never fails. Martha, Martha, stop doing, stop judging, release the fears, release the anxieties, and just be with us. Come and be. Going back to my personal story, I did a fair job of keeping all the balls in the air, going to seminary with 2 kids, finding out I was pregnant with the 3rd, serving in a church with these 3 young kids, and of course a wonderful husband and partner who supported me. And then that all came to a roaring stop on May 23rd, 2009. I was competing in a triathlon that day. And on the bike portion of that triathlon, I guess I wasn't paying very close attention. I needed to pay more attention, Claire. Because suddenly I found myself on the other side of the yellow line in the road. And the last thing I remember before the collision was thinking, what is that dump truck doing there? Following that collision, my next thought was, that I remember, was waking up in the ER with my 6-year-old son staring at some injury on my hand. And I didn't know it yet on May 23rd, 2009, but that day marked the first day of a 3-month medical leave of absence from the church I was serving. And my brain injury was such that even brief conversations wore me out, and I would be down and out for hours. And for those of you who have experienced brain trauma or know somebody who does, you understand what I'm talking about. The healing process, as it happens, is wonderful, and it's also exhausting. Healing is tiring work. But suddenly, the Martha within me sat down and quieted herself. She turned her attention to Jesus, to simply be in his presence, to allow him to heal her, accepting the fact of her acceptance. And it wasn't easy. Martha has a really strong personality, but it was good. And in the years since, I know that 3-month rest that I had at Jesus' feet was helpful, but my journey of integration continues because I get off center, I get off balance, and the doing takes over and the being cries out for attention, and vice versa. But over time, I'm seeing that they are coming together. They are complementing each other more, and I'm able to be less self-critical of myself and able to serve with love, which ultimately I think is what my intentions are for life, to be guided in love, to serve in love, for the purpose of love. So on this journey, my journey to integration, our collective journey to integration and wholeness, I and we look for God's presence, no matter where we are, what we're doing, and that's where Holy as the Day is Spent comes in. And Claire did such a beautiful job talking about that. But as we engage in spiritual practices of seeing the extraordinary, the holy in the ordinary, that's part of what heals the soul. That's part of what Jesus was inviting Martha to that day. And saying, Martha, you know, all these things that you're doing, this food that you're preparing, has a holy purpose. Remember that purpose. Be grounded in that purpose of love. That song talks about that integration of being and doing, of holy and profane, of heaven and earth. And I am so grateful that Dan was able to arrange it with Mark to bring that song to us today, and that Claire spoke to it so beautifully. It really encapsulates everything I'm very awkwardly trying to say right now in this word preached. And as Claire did, yes, I think about pull out a couple of the verses, the dish and drain. Holy is the dish and drain, the soap and sink and cup and plate. And it is surprising. It's surprising to think that doing the dishes could be holy work. Pruny hands and cold water that suddenly becomes too hot, or scraping off stuck-on food that won't release. But then I look at the baptismal font, and I think about the cup and plate that's here at the Lord's table. And those things are holy in this place. Why not in our homes as well? These ordinary things that carry extraordinary meaning for us in our lives. And a couple other things that Claire didn't mention that I would like to is there's a line in that song about geese flying overhead, and they're singing hymns. Hymns of geese flying overhead. That line transforms that sound for me. So instead of random, boisterous honks directing, communicating, and admonishing whatever geese are saying to one another, the honks are a song. They're a song of life, a hymn of meaning and purpose to our feathered friends. And the last one I'll mention is this line. Folding sheets, or folding any kind of laundry, but folding sheets, like folding hands, to pray as only laundry can. You know what? It is funny, but I cannot tell you how that lyric has changed and enriched my understanding of doing laundry. It is a sacred task. It can be a careful, loving preparation that I do for the people I love. And not just laundry, but all of our tasks, all of our doing can be infused with intentions of love. The love of Christ that motivates us, guides us on the journey, and which finally, in the end, is our goal. So this journey toward wholeness and integration is lifelong. And there are blessed moments when we experience it. Moments when we come to a place where our internal and our external reality seamlessly flow into one another. Moments when it all belongs. It's all coherent and there's no disconnect. moments when we are fully present and aware. So all the world is holy and infused with the light and love of Christ. Everything we need is here right now. I personally was opened up to that reality through a time of suffering as I healed from an accident. Carrie Newcomer and Claire, through her, opens our eyes and hearts and minds to a reality through a beautiful song. And Jesus himself opens Martha's eyes to that reality with his heartfelt invitation. When he says, "Martha, Martha, you are worried about many things. Set aside your worry and enter into the wonder. Set aside your reaching and rest a bit. Set aside your to-do list and let yourself be for a while." Siblings in Christ, how about you today? Are you also worried and distracted by many things? Are you wondering how much longer I'm going to be talking so I can get home and start on my to-do list at home? Well, we're almost there, because I invite you now to come and sit at the feet of Jesus, to come experience his love, his peace, his truth, his wholeness of being. And today we will do that through a very brief meditation. This meditation comes from Father Richard Rohr, a Franciscan friar who has helped reintroduce mysticism and contemplative practices to the modern world. So my hope and prayer is that it brings you to a place of contemplation, a place of wanting integration and wholeness and love at the feet of Jesus. So, get comfortable. And if you choose to, you may close your eyes. If you don't choose to, that's fine. If you don't feel comfortable, just soften your gaze. And inhale. And exhale. Notice where you're holding tension and try to release it as you breathe. Release the tension in your forehead, around your eyes. Release your clenched jaw. Relax your shoulders. And listen to these words from Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. And as you return to this space, return your attention to what's happening here. I pray that you know the love of Christ that surrounds you, enfolds you, goes before you, goes behind you, walks beside you. Amen.